Hello and welcome to Contractor Outlook Newscast. My name is Heidi Ellsworth and I'm with the coffee shops, and I am very honored today on this Contractor Outlook to invite one of my dear friends and someone I've looked up to for so long, Mark Graham from National Roofing Contractors Association. Mark, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here with you and all your listeners. I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
I have to tell you, this has been on my wish list for a long time to get you on a show to really talk about what's going on in roofing. You have so much in-depth information when it comes to the technical, to what's really happening out there with the systems, the buildings. So Mark, I'm just so excited. Thank you for being here. And why don't you start out with an introduction, introduce yourself, and give us a little bit of your history.
Well, I first want to start with saying thanks. I mean, I've listened in on so many of these and learned so many things from your speakers. It's kind of cool to get to do one, and you just do such a fantastic job spreading the news in the roofing industry, and just greatly appreciate that for all of us. For the last 32 years, I've been the Vice President of Technical Services with the National Roofing Contractors Association. What that basically means is I'm kind of the focal point within NRCA on technical issues, kind of between the industry and phone calls and what we get to hear and spreading the word. And then our technical committees. We have a group of probably about 35 contractors that meet some monthly, others quarterly, to deal with technical issues. And it's kind of really interesting. You'd think after 32 years, I've seen everything, and there's still issues that bubble up. I mean, I don't think a single day goes by and it's something new, something that takes some homework or warrants some discussion within the industry. And that's really the cool thing about what you're doing with this conversation and what we get to do at NRCA with our committee members. We get to sit down with folks and say, what's going on and why is it an issue right now? Why wasn't it an issue 5 years ago or 10 years ago or back when I was young? It's just kind of interesting. It just goes to show the industry continues to evolve. We continue to learn. And in some respects, I think we kind of continue to push the envelope a little bit. So the topic we're going to talk about today is one of those issues.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think about what you've seen and what you and the technical committees and your whole team of technical experts there at NRCA work on. And so much changes when it comes to the types of systems, to technology, to the things that are happening. And I have been lucky enough to go to several conferences and sit in and listen to you speak. And one of the ones that and this is what we're going to talk about today, it really caught my attention, and that was roof weight. And I think back about, all the roofs that I've been on, that I've walked on, that I've taken pictures on. And really, when you were sharing roof weight and what is happening today and the dangers involved, I was like, okay, we need to talk about this. This is so important. So maybe you can just start us out, Mark, with a little bit of history of how this, I love how you say every day I get a phone call with something that I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. When did this all kind of start bubbling up on the concerns of roofing contractors on roofs that basically can't hold the weight that they have going?
Yeah. Well, let me start out with, I don't think a contractor calls me and tells me about the job that went perfectly and the building owner is so thrilled he actually pays early and everybody's happy. I don't get those calls. I know they happen. I know contractors have a lot of those jobs. Things are going well. It just seems like I get the calls on the ones that are not good, or there's a problem, or the ones that bother me are the ones where someone gets hurt or worse yet. And I would say in the last 3, maybe 4 years, the number of calls we've received or the number of inquiries we've gotten at NRCA resulting in falls through roof decks. Now, I'm not talking about a fall at a roof or a fall at a ladder. We know about those, and I think everybody in the industry is keenly aware of that. We have a we have a fall issue in the roofing industry, and we need to do a lot better. But what I'm talking about in the last handful of years is falls through roof decks. In other words, a re-roofing operation, and potentially the deck is deteriorated or not as strong as the crew up on the roof may have anticipated. And unfortunately, somebody falls through. And I'm going to be honest with you, Heidi, some of these are just tragic. I mean, there's some fatalities, and I'm not going to want to get into these in any great detail because I actually get kind of emotional about them. It's just tragic what's happening, and it's the unexpected. And I think all of us have a fundamental responsibility, and I mean all of us in the roofing industry, whether it be contractors, designers, manufacturers, building owners, suppliers, what have you. At the end of the day, we have to make sure we send everybody home healthy. Mm-hmm. And when we're not doing that, we're doing something not right. So, I mean, you ask, how did we start to hear about this? Well, when there's problems of that nature, I typically get a call, or my staff at NRCA gets a call, and sometimes it's from somebody with the term Esquire at the end of their name. You know, they're looking for information, and those are always those tread cautiously calls. But the question is, there's been a fall through, there's been a partial deck collapse, and I'm differentiating deck collapse here from structure collapses. And the question is, what is the standard practice? Mm-hmm. Well, interestingly enough, there isn't one. We really don't have a standard practice on, for example, how we load a roof in a re-roofing job. Or we really don't have a standard practice on how we do an inspection on a roof before we do a re-roofing job. Or maybe we know there's some deck deterioration. What do we do? And we have never sat down, and for that matter, the industry has never sat down and said, step 1, 2, 3, 4, this is what you should be doing. Obviously, that's something that's needed, but that's not where we are right now. So I kind of welcome the opportunity to talk a little bit about the issue and make some folks aware of it. And, I'm all ears. If your listeners and viewers have some input for me, I'd be more than happy to hear them. On the same token, I don't think we want to restrain the issue to the extent that we're not capable of doing roofing work. But at the end of the day, the fundamental tenet is we need to send our folks home at the end of the day and send them home healthy.
Exactly. Do you think there's more factors going into the problem on the roof? Since, you say this is the last 3 or 4 years, and I'm thinking, well, roofing contractors have been on old buildings forever, right? And so did they just have different ways that they were handling those older buildings that maybe have been lost over time? And just what are some of the factors that really have bubbled this up?
I think one of the things that I want to focus on a bit is what I'm going to refer to as roof package weight. In other words, when a manufacturer manufactures materials, puts them on a pallet, sends them to a distributor, and ultimately ends up on the job, package weights have gotten significantly heavier. And I put a slide together that I can share with you that shows some pallet weights on roofing materials. And it's interesting. I do a large number of presentations, and kind of the things I keep in mind in my presentations is what slide do I have up on the screen that causes somebody to grab their phone and hold it up and take a picture? Yes. My slide of some examples of roof loading weights is by far the most photographed slide I've been using in the last couple of years. And a couple of things on this slide, for example, a pallet of roll goods, underlayment, a ply sheet, a modified bitumen cap sheet, for example, is going to run about 2,500 pounds per a 4x4 pallet. That's a lot of weight. That's more weight than the roof deck is designed for. A popular cover board many of us use is the same thing. A 4x8 pallet is about 2,500 pounds. Another interesting one, which I think I didn't realize, is a pallet of rolls of single ply membrane. And you think single plies, they're relatively lightweight. But when you get a bunch of rolls together and they're on a pallet or on a skid, that pallet can weigh in upwards of about 3,500 pounds.
Wow.
And
Okay.
we might not think about it, but when you do think about it from the logical perspective, it makes a big difference where and in what orientation, for example, that pallet of single ply membranes is set on the roof. So, for example, if that pallet was set parallel to the steel bar joist, and it's between steel bar joists, conceivably the roof deck is carrying that entire load itself. Versus if we just did something relatively simple and turned that pallet 90 degrees, and we had that roll of or that pallet of 10-foot rolls across 2 or 3 bar joists, then the joists are carrying that pallet instead of just the deck. Another thing I think that's another contributing factor is this might not make sense at first, but once we think it through, I think it's going to be logical. As we've moved to larger single ply rolls, we need more clear open space on our roof areas, which means all that material that's stored on the roof needs to be concentrated over in one area. Back in the olden days, when I started in the roofing industry, a roll of roofing material, a roll of felt or a roll of modified was either 36 inches wide or a meter wide, so you could distribute pallets throughout the roof. Now that we're dealing with 7, 10, 12, 15 foot wide single ply rolls, for example, when we're doing installations, we need big, wide open areas. So as a result, the material stored is usually all pushed over on one side of the roof. Now let's take those two issues and combine them.
Yeah.
We have some incredibly heavy pallet loads. And now we're concentrating those loads next to each other. We're creating a roof deck or roof structure issue that is just not a good situation. Then we add a crew of roofers, whether that be 4, 6, 10, or 12. And roofers aren't usually the most lightweight folks that are out there. that just becomes another load. So I don't think it's one single issue. I mean, I think you raise a good question. What's changed? It's kind of the multitude of changes and the combination of things occurring. It's just an interesting proposition. And like I said, within probably the last 3 or 4 years, the issues of falls through roofs have become a large issue. And then when we go out and get the aftermath pictures and things along that line, there's usually like, this deck was probably a little bit overloaded and it would have been a lot better off if things could have been distributed out more. So, I mean, I think it's something we need to keep an eye on, and I'm glad we're able to talk about it.
Yeah, me too. Because really, when you think about that, there are some ways to get around it, right? Like you said, spreading it out across the joist. But myself, having worked for several manufacturers over my career, I know that the advances, the technology advances that have gone on in such, big rolls of product. Whereas before, and this wasn't OSHA very approved either, but they just carry those rolls up on their shoulders onto the roof. And now the cranes are coming up there, huge amounts of weight that is totally changing things. And you know what, Mark, one of the things that you really made me think about too was it's the safety of all of our roofing professionals on the roof, and it's the safety of everyone below too.
Oh, very much so.
You think of that load coming down and hitting below, that can cause all kinds of problems.
Well, let me relate to one, and this is a tragic situation. One job that we've been involved in investigating actually involved HVAC contractors up on a roof. It was a combination roofing HVAC job. And the takeaway here is going to be one of the lessons learned, actually. It was a school project. And, because it's a school, the principal and the faculty didn't want the roofers, didn't want the HVAC folks in the roof or inside the building. So everything was kind of external. So they never had an opportunity to inspect the deck from the bottom side and see if things were okay. But to make a long story short, partial collapse, 2 roofers fell through a school gymnasium roof during this is bad, during a PE gym class for a group of 3rd graders. So it not only impacts the field personnel that were involved, but those young folks have something burned into their minds that they're never gonna forget. So it does definitely impact not only us as the industry, but building interior contents and in some cases occupants. It's that one was tough. That's probably the worst one I've ever dealt with.
Oh my gosh, my stomach just totally dropped. And so for the roofing community, I think, and for building owners out there, because I know building owners are listening to this and some general contractors out there too, really understanding what is going on in the roof. And you brought up a great point, Mark. It's not just the roofing contractors, but you also have so much more equipment on the roof than we've ever had before. Telecommunications, HVAC units that are bolder than ever, satellites, all of those types of things. So there's really, from a structural standpoint, it's not only during the installation, although obviously with what we're talking about with the consolidated weight in one area, but it's overall making sure that all of this technology that's on the roof, the roofing, the HVAC, the telecommunications, everything is working. So what are some of the recommendations that you're starting to make? What are you able to give out both to the contract, and maybe start with both contracting community, but also I know NRCA gets a lot of calls from building owners, engineers, the architects across the board?
Well, first off, the roofing industry needs to own the roof. We have other trades up there, but we just basically need to own that real estate. In other words, through our maintenance programs, through our designs, we have to make it very clear to building owners that we as an industry own the roof. So if a building owner gets another trade on a roof, a telecommunications company, the PV folks, the HVAC folks, whoever, at a minimum, the roofing industry, the roofing contractor doing the maintenance on the job, at least deserves a phone call to know what's going on. Then a couple of things more operational for us as the roofing industry. I think we just need to be very emphatic. It's just, this is the way it needs to be. On a re-roofing job, we have to have access to the interior of the building. We have to have the ability to go in, find out where leaks are, see where deck deterioration is occurring, see where there's problem areas, maybe see where deck has been replaced or something along that line from a previous job. And I suggest we get so emphatic on this that if we don't have interior access, we just take a pass on the job. It's not worth the risk. And that school situation I mentioned, I think, is a classic example. I mean, in this situation, the contractor, the roofer, the HVAC contractor was attempting to be accommodating to their building owner, and they didn't let their personnel in because they didn't want to upset school operations. But those types of jobs just have to be and don't go there. And I'm also going to say we need to get to the point where we go into the building and look around first. I'm thinking over my career how many jobs you get on, and the first thing you do is go up the ladder and get on the roof. We have to change that mindset.
Yeah.
We have to go inside and look around first, and just see if there's any issues or any problems. Secondly, I think we gotta be a lot more diligent on our roof loading, especially in re-roofing jobs. I've talked to contractors around the country. I've talked to distributors and suppliers and asked the folks you have out loading a roof, do they go inside and check the orientation of bar joists, for example? Do they know that area where they stage the crane or the boom truck and they're dropping the pallets? Is that a deteriorated area or is that a stronger area? And then ultimately, we need to do a lot better job on just distributing loads across roofs. I'll share an interesting kind of side story with you. NRCA and the Steel Deck Institute and the Steel Joist Institute and the metal building manufacturers are doing a joint research project on live loads of roofing. It's actually totally independent of this study, but it lends an interesting story. And I shared some of those roof loading numbers with you, with the researchers, the college professors, I mean, PhDs in engineering. And they were kind of dumbfounded by some of the loads we put on roofs. And they just said, that's not possible. That's not possible. Well, yes, it is. It is possible because there is quite a bit of reserve capacity in roof structures. But ultimately, to prove the point, a couple of our contractors and I were able to get the PhD researchers up on a couple of roofs, which was an interesting proposition to have on the ladder and things like that. But they were great sports. But they got up on the roofs and they were just dumbfounded by the amount of material, the volume of material that we need to load on roofs to conduct a roofing job. And the conversation ensued that was very interesting. You know, it's like, yeah, we are probably overloading the roof deck, but on the same token, we don't have deck collapses. We don't have roof collapses on an everyday basis. The problems that we have typically apply to some type of deterioration, history of leakage on the roof, or maybe something occurred structurally that we quite were not aware of. And those are the reasons why we have to have not only the estimators, project managers, field superintendent folks out doing interior inspections, but we need to get to the point where the folks loading the jobs, whether that be the roofers folks or the distributors folks, at least stick their head inside the building, look up, note deck deterioration. Boy, there's not a lot of tarps in this area, so we might be okay right here, and then distribute loads from there. Another thing I'm going to be pushing on, and NRCA is going to be pushing on, is I think we really need to take a good long look at package and pallet weights coming out of our manufacturers. I totally understand the situation our manufacturers are in. I mean, how many times I'm anywhere in the industry right now and we talk about the issue we have with transportation and trucking. It's a big issue.
Yeah.
And the manufacturers, the supply chain is trying to put more on a pallet or consolidate or make denser pallets. I totally understand that from the trucking standpoint. But when that pallet gets on the roof, that's when we get to that 2,500 or 3,800 pound pallet. In those situations, we probably need a pallet that's tiered, can be broken down, and, for example, hoisted in 2 operations instead of 1. That's an easy way to do it. And that would cut down some of the weight the folks up on the roof need to deal with also, which really addresses another issue, some of the injuries we have, because sometimes our folks are just lifting too much. So I think we just need to take a lot bigger picture look at this entire weight and load issue. I'm going to readily admit NRCA and I don't have the answers yet. We're still looking for input. And quite frankly, that's one of the reasons why I'm so grateful for you giving us this opportunity to talk about this. If anybody has any ideas, feel free to reach out.
That's, here's the thing. We can either, as an industry, come together and really look at solutions and work through this, or somebody else will, right? Through the legal system or government or whatever it may be. And so bringing the industry together, and I was thinking that as you were talking, the manufacturers, the distributors, and the contractors all together to kind of put together solutions that doesn't hurt people, but only helps them and helps the companies as we go through. That's the thing that's so awesome about NRCA is they bring everybody together. They bring all the different voices together. And I love the fact that you're also coordinating with other associations, the MBMA and the steel erector. I mean, and steel decking. That's awesome.
It's always interesting. Sometimes that first phone call is not a popular, well-liked call. But usually by the end of that conversation or 2 or 3 down, it's like this moment. It's like, oh, wait a minute, we have a common issue here. And let's get together and take care of this, and let's move on to other things. That's one of the fantastic things about the industry, and quite frankly, that's what's kept me engaged at NRCA now for 32 years, is how we as an industry will work together, collaborate, and work for the better good. I mean, we still fight every once in a while and scratch and pull hair and things like that. But that's just the way it is. But
that's what a family does.
when the industry has an issue to deal with, we work together incredibly well. It's really rewarding.
That is exactly what I've seen across the in my involvement for over 30 years myself, seeing how great we come together. And it's all about protecting lives, protecting our customers, and making sure that everything is done in a way that everyone goes home to their families every night. That is the most important. And everything else that comes around with it. So for Mark, for contractors who are listening out there, general contractors who are listening out there thinking, as they're working on obviously new construction is a little bit different than re-roof, but there's still a lot of weight issues. Can you give them a little bit of advice on how to get a hold of you, how to work with the NRCA, and how to really kind of bring all this together? What are some of the things they should be looking forward to that will be coming out of some of these studies that you're doing?
Well, the roof live load study we're doing with the other industry folks, that should wrap up later this calendar year, and probably the first of the year we'll have something out on that. That will probably ultimately result in some building code changes that'll go to the International Code Council. So the research is not done yet, so I don't quite know where we're going. But some great work there. It's always good to find a group of academics that's willing to work with the industry and to see them engaged, and good things come out of that. The other thing I'm just going to encourage is folks, if it's folks in the office, folks in the field, if you see something, say something. If you something doesn't set well with you, or something you would like to pass on to the industry for the greater good, feel free to call NRCA or shoot us an email, or shoot me an email personally. And don't look at it as I'm telling on somebody or I'm ratting somebody out. I've been doing this long enough. I think the confidentiality issue and things along that line are well regarded. But if you need help, if you see something different, pick up the phone, shoot me an email, or somewhere. If you see me out on the road doing a presentation, stop me and let's chat for 10 or 15 minutes. I'll be real honest with you. The reason I do the presentations that I do, and the reason I spend the amount of time on the road that I do, is I don't look at it as I'm training or I'm educating. I'm looking at it as I'm being trained and I'm being educated, because the stuff people will be comfortable coming up and mentioning to me after a presentation is usually worth the trip for me. So, like I said, if you see something, say something. And contractors, especially within your ranks, like I said, the slide that folks are taking pictures of, the folks in the field know how much a pallet weighs.
Yeah.
Because they're hauling it around all day. The folks that don't know how much that pallet weighs are the estimators, the project managers, maybe the safety director, and we need better communication there. So let's talk internally within your companies on how we can deal with some of these issues and how to be safe and how to be careful, and maybe figure this out a little bit and share your thoughts with us. The collective power of this industry is just amazing to me. It continues to be. We put our heads together. We do fantastic things.
I agree. I love it. And your conversations, all those talks that you have, it allows everyone to start thinking and to start thinking and to work together to put solutions together to take care of these concerns that are happening out there. Right. So, Mark, great advice. Thank you. And we're going to be having you back on a regular basis to kind of talk about some of these issues that are out there. Get us thinking. I love it.
That's great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please visit the NRCA directory on all of the coffee shops to get information about this issue and others, what they do with safety, risk, health, you name it. Advocacy across the board is just absolutely amazing. And you can get so much information that you need for your company to be safe and successful. And we will be sure to check out all of our podcasts on any of the coffee shops under the W navigation, and be sure on your favorite podcast channel to subscribe and set those notifications so you don't miss a single episode. We'll be seeing you next time on Contractor Outlook Newscast.